Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. North London derby defeat. There is nothing quite like it, is there? There's nothing quite able to suck the soul and life out of you. And it was such a weird North London derby. Honestly, that was one of the strangest ones I have witnessed. Anyone that knows me or have listened to these, watched these for previous years will know I hate these games. I hate them with a passion. I never enjoy them until there's a win and it's afterwards. But just the whole process of the actual game I don't like. But this one just was particularly strange. On no kind of any other evidence other than the scoreline. And I know that's the most important one. But no way was this a 5-goal game. No way was this a 5-goal thriller with 3 goals for one side, 2 for the other. And I know the scoreline tells us that. The match itself was actually quite kind of boring in lots of respects. Look, don't get me wrong, there's lots to take out of it. There's lots of stuff we can discuss and dive into, things that need to be fixed, little VAR controversies and opinions and stuff. But actually, when you boil it down to the amount of shots and saves the goalkeepers had to make, it really actually wasn't that kind of match. David Raya had no saves to make. Guillermo Vicario made 1 save. And yeah, I know you could say there's other goals, but I think the key, what I'm trying to say is, there were 5 goals scored and neither team particularly had to do much to get those goals. And it was such a shame because it felt like a game that was going in a different direction. I think I said in the last video, and I kind of put a tweet out about it the day before, how Spurs going into it with 15 days off had to show this incredible energy. They had to show this real hunger and desire for the game. And I actually felt they did. I didn't actually think that was an issue. It was just their absolute calamitous ability to suddenly hand the opposition goals. That was the problem. But then Arsenal pretty much did that in the second half as well for Spurs. I'd even go as far to say I actually thought Spurs played better in the half that they conceded 3 goals in than they did in the half that they scored 2 in. And I'd probably say, I think Arsenal would probably say the same. I was sat next to our Arsenal reporter that writes for our website. I'm the Spurs reporter, obviously. And he turned to me, Kaya, and he said, after it was 3-0, he said, I have no idea how Arsenal were 3-0 up in this game. And that was the way it was. It was such an odd game with no real kind of logic to it. It didn't really go to form in terms of the performances. Yeah, it was so odd. I mean, obviously, first goal, it's an own goal. Højbjerg heads it into his own net. Spurs caught on the counter while getting what I think should have probably been a legitimate penalty at the other end of the pitch. Then another daft set-piece goal, which has got some other little bits and pieces to it, but ultimately is still a daft set-piece goal. And then, yes, second half, David Raya boots a pass straight to Cristian Romero, who scores very nicely from it. And then Declan Rice boots Ben Davies. I'm hoping it was his leg, because if it was where I thought he might have kicked him, it's very, very unpleasant. Which obviously Sonny dispatched the penalty. So 3 shots on target, 3 goals for Arsenal. I know technically they didn't all come from the 3 shots on target. 2 shots on target from Tottenham, 2 goals. That was a weird thing. All the talk pre-match was about gung-ho Tottenham are going to get ripped apart by Arsenal. It's going to score 15 goals. Spurs actually weren't ripped apart. And I know, again, everything sounds so stupid when you've got a 3-2 scoreline. But hopefully you understand by this point in this video already, it wasn't that kind of game. I wouldn't say Arsenal really got in behind Spurs at will. You know, they just didn't. The occasions the ball kind of got over the top, other than the Saka goal, which is a whole other thing in itself, Mickey van der Ven just mopped it up, as he's meant to do in this system. That's the kind of point of it. It was so weird. Arsenal kind of created quite little, really. They only had 38 possession in the game, 28 possession in the first half. They had about half of Spurs' passes, 9 attempts at goal to Spurs. I think they had, I haven't written it down here, I think Spurs had about 14, if I remember correctly. And Arsenal had to make 26 clearances out of their box during the game. But the problem is, and again, I'm not saying, oh, look, they didn't deserve to win the game, because Spurs, yeah, like I said, Raya didn't have to make a single save. Vicario had to make one, which was the save from Saka with his foot, although I think, and a couple of others in the press box, thought that there might have been called back for an offside in the build-up anyway. Just ridiculous game. Again, yeah, didn't enjoy it in any way. Of course, there was a little bit of hope towards the end that maybe they're going to snatch something back. I was trying to work out with Guesty when we did the podcast earlier, just before we started. He was saying he still didn't think Spurs deserved a point out of it. I think they probably deserved a point. I would go that far to say it. I think in terms of, the amount of chances Romero had, hit the post, had two other headers just wide, I would say they probably deserved a point, especially as some of the VAR decision we're going to talk about as well. I know you don't get points for VAR decisions, but yeah, I felt a point would have just about been fair. And Mikel Arteta, afterwards in the press conference talking about Spurs, he said, look, you can't just pretend to come here, not suffer and play Spurs off the park. It doesn't happen. You just have to look at their performance against the other top teams to prove that, because they're a really good side. They forced us to sit deep. We had an issue with their high press. We gave so many balls away, simple balls. That ball circulation wasn't good enough. I think Ben Davies might have been suffering from that after being kicked by Declan Rice. Then the result also has an impact. When you're 2-0 up and you feel more comfortable doing that, we look to real threat as well on the counter. They commit so many players, so their structure forces you as well to have one or two more players in certain areas that provokes you to be a little bit deeper. We didn't really concede much there, but the second half, I think, especially with the ball in certain situations, was much better. So that's what I'm saying. I just realised he actually does agree with exactly what I said earlier, that he kind of feels like Arsenal were better in the second half when they conceded 2 goals and didn't score any. That was the kind of game it was. It was like a game that was flipped on its head. And look, there are VAR gripes, absolutely. Maybe not all of them. The interesting one that we have first was the Mickey van der Ven equaliser that never was. It was such a moment as well when we all thought it had gone in. And this is what I hate about VAR, is that you can't really celebrate and get carried away. And it felt like in that moment, okay, Spurs have started really well. The crowd were brilliant. It's just such a great noise. The chap with the trumpet up on the skywalk. It was just like, it all started really well. And they did a little video. And everyone was really pumped up for it. And I felt Spurs took that onto the pitch. And then you have Heung-min head it into his own net. You can kind of forgive that in the scheme of the game, because you kind of think, okay, it's just an unfortunate thing that happened in it. And then obviously Van der Ven puts a ball in the net and you're thinking, okay, back on track, here we go, show them that even if you score a goal like that, we're going to slap you back down. And then VAR went, hello. Oh my God. It was marginal. It was marginal offside it was called back for by the VAR. And that kind of brought with it questions as well of what can be deemed deliberate within the rules. Because the problem that some people have pointed out is that, so Pedro Porro has a shot and then it ricochets between 2 players. I think it might have been Rice and Tomiyasu. I can't remember exactly who they are. But there's question marks over exactly then how that applies to the rules of the game. If an opposition player touches the ball, is the player still offside? Technically, yes, unless one of those touches is a deliberate attempt to clear or pass the ball. Personally, and this is just me, I kind of felt like they were blocks. They were attempts to stop a shot rather than to clear or pass the ball. And I think it just about fell into the category of offside. But that's just my opinion. I know there's other people who have different views. I feel like they didn't kind of fall into that deliberate clearance or pass territory. So yeah, it was a really good finish from Van der Ven as well. He put it away really nicely. But yeah, and then of course we had the second goal for Arsenal. And in the build-up to that, this is the one where I disagree with the on-pitch or VAR, whatever you want to call it, decision. In that you could quite clearly see that Dejan Kulusevski goes in field, cuts in from the right-hand side, as we know he loves to do. He did one lovely turn with the ball. I can't remember, it was first half, I think. I don't think it was part of this move, though. But Kulusevski goes inside into the box. Leandro Trossard, it's accidental, but it doesn't matter. Catches the back of Kulusevski's heel, which knocks his foot forward into his other foot. We've seen it a million times. And Kulusevski kind of went down in stages. He was trying to stay up, but couldn't quite do it and eventually fell down. For me, that happens anywhere else on the pitch, that's a free kick. If Kulusevski is running towards the penalty area, and as he's going, his heel is clipped and it knocks him into his other foot, which sends him over, that's a free kick. There's almost no question about it. But when it's in the penalty area, there seems to be this extra scrutiny. It's like, well, it has to be a really foul. It can't just be a foul. It's got to be a foul. It's a really, really weird extra layer of scrutiny to things that happen in the penalty box than happen outside it. And there's another one potentially we can talk about, which is kind of a similar vibe to it as well. VAR had a very brief check of it and apparently deemed it not to be enough contact. Or also a clear and obvious error from the on-pitch officials. Does it matter kind of how much contact there is if it sends the man over? In terms of, I think you can clearly see that Kulusevski is not diving. There is no like, oh, I'm going to fall now kind of moment. He is genuinely clipped and loses his balance. That is a foul. Another player has caused that to happen in the penalty area. So that was the bit that annoyed me because I didn't really feel like it... they were kind of given enough of that decision at all. And then obviously the ball's over the top. And then look, there's another side to that as well, which Postecoglou picked up afterwards. He was unhappy at how they were arguing, questioning that decision rather than reacting to what was happening behind them or alongside them. And that left kind of Davies having a run back and Van de Ven tried to run back and Saka running through is one of the best players in the Premier League. And you kind of could see what was going to happen there. I've seen some people suggesting that Ben Davies should have tried to marshal him out to the right-hand side. I think that's easier said than done with a player like Saka with his pace and his ability to dribble. I think whoever was in that position would have struggled to stop him. He just had so much space. It wasn't so much that you could guide him out there. So that was the second goal. And then comes the kind of the slap in the face of the third goal, just when Spurs are still trying to get back into it at that point. When you see, what's his name? Ben White run in front of Vicario just at the last moment before the ball is put into the box. And he kind of rams himself back into Vicario to ensure that Vicario is kind of off his feet, essentially on his, almost over his line, then trying to react to Havertz's header. And look, I'm not saying he might have got there. I'm not saying whether he was going to come out and get it. But for me, in that moment, that's a foul. That is a foul. And if that happens anywhere else on the pitch, that's kind of my point again about the Kulusevski thing. If that happens anywhere else on the pitch, and I don't know, Ben White's going up for a header with, let's say, Richarlison, if he runs in front of Richarlison as Richarlison's trying to head the ball, and instead of going up for the header, rams himself back into Richarlison, that's a foul. Why is it different if it's in the penalty area? No, it's got to be a foul. Again, I must stress, I am not saying that VAR decisions are why Spurs lost this game overall. Yes, maybe key moments, you could have had the butterfly effect, different things could have happened. I do think Spurs were still architects of their own downfall in certain regards, especially set-piece defending. However, they were not helped. I thought there were some tough ones there. If they had gone the other way, I would have probably looked at that and kind of been like, ugh, Spurs got away with a few moments there. I really would have. That was just... the officiating was not at a high level in this one for me. There was too much just kind of glossed over. I mean, Ben White was doing weird stuff. I think it was for the Højbjerg on goal. I think, if I remember correctly, he was like doing this weird thing with Vicario's gloves. Some people have said he was trying to undo the Velcro in his gloves. I'm not sure if he was, purely because it's kind of, he's got his shirt sleeve over that. So I don't know if he'd be able to. I think he was just trying to distract him, just kind of flicking underneath his gloves. And he's kind of, Vicario's doing this, like, get off me kind of thing. It's like a little kid being annoyed by like his older brother or something. It's all, I guess it's that kind of dark arts thing, isn't it? So I've got a really itchy nose today, I don't know why. The dark arts thing that maybe Spurs don't do enough of. And the trouble is, you watch a game like that, and teams get away with it, but it's not consistent. You get other games where teams don't get away with that. And then you got Michael Oliver standing 6 foot from Rice absolutely booting Davies in the box and just kind of looking at him, no, nothing I can see wrong with that. And then it was weird. The VAR kind of actually, he was sent to his monitor. The ball, I don't think he'd even gone out of play. I think he just realised, like, we're at a certain amount of time now. I'm being told I've made a bit of a mess here. Yeah, so it was the first time I think VAR actually helped Spurs, didn't it, in the game, and maybe the only time. But Postecoglou was asked about the Kulusevski penalty claim before the second goal, and he said, look, doesn't matter how I saw it. What matters is what I've said all along. Games are not refereed in the stadium anymore. They're refereed somewhere else, and no one will convince me otherwise. It's not even re-refereed. It's refereed somewhere else. That's why I don't celebrate goals anymore. I wait for somebody down the road. I just don't think referees in the stadium anymore have that authority they used to make decisions. They just go, you know what? I'll just wait and see what the bloke down the road thinks. It's a shame. I don't like it, but it's here to stay, and I've got to accept it like everyone else. Yeah, I don't disagree with him. I think we've said this before in these videos. I think they do really kind of just... They do. They just wait to see what a reaction is going to be. You can see it with offsides. They don't put their flags up. Sometimes I know they've got to delay certain aspects of the flag, but sometimes it just doesn't go up at all. And you kind of think, I swear I saw that was way offside. And there's fouls where they don't give it. And this is a problem because it then leads into the clear and obvious error category of maybe they've just thought in the back of their minds, I'm just going to leave this for the VAR. And actually they've kind of influenced it, but because it was a foul, but maybe not a huge foul or something, a foul, the VAR's gone, is it a clear and obvious error? And I don't know. I think it's just a mess, the whole system. I think semi-automated offsides are going to help to a degree. I don't mind them at all. I've kind of put that in the category. I don't mind my snake noise. It was more Hannibal Lecter, wasn't it? I kind of put them on the category of goal line technology. So it's like that's fine. It's a bit of an either or, but you're still going to have subjective moments like that when you kind of have to decide whether the opposition player touching the ball is deliberate or not. But yeah, look, as I say, and I repeat this, despite the VAR, this is not a video about me saying Spurs was robbed. I'm not saying that. VAR had a part to play in some of the decisions in the game, of course, and the officiating. But I think Spurs were, like I say, architects of their own downfall as well. I asked three questions after the game to Postecoglou. The first one, the generic one, you have to do just to kind of set it off. Just asking him what his initial thoughts were after it, and he said, disappointing. It was a disappointing day for us. It was a big game for the club, for our fans. We didn't get the outcome we wanted. So obviously very disappointing. We wanted to win today for our supporters and for the club. We didn't do that, and whatever I think about the performance, it's still the outcome that sits on you. I thought our general football was good. It was decent. We controlled the game for long periods for the most part, but we know that. We know we're a team that can do that. It's about now, over the course of time, getting from where we are to where we want to get to. To do that, we're still not absolutely laser focused on the details, the small things that get you from where we are to become a team that contends. Credit to Arsenal. They're there now. They're a team that does deal with the details well, and we don't. And he was asked, I think it was Charlie from The Athletic, asked him what exactly those details were. And he said, oh, mate, there are thousands. I'm not going to sit here, as I say, to go through them all. But it's the little details like you can't give time and space to the opposition. You can't make decisions or lose focus in any given moment. Even with the transition goal, we were focused on a decision at the other end when we should have been thinking about the danger that was potentially at the other side. And so, yeah, there are some details that I kind of feel like Postecoglou can fix or focus on. And, yeah, he didn't seem to entirely agree with that afterwards. It is, of course, set pieces. It's quite funny. Whenever Spurs concede a set-piece goal, myself and a few other journalists get the same thing. Ask about set pieces. Don't be scared. You'll lose your press pass. Ask about set pieces and all that. We've asked about set pieces. I don't know why I went really high. We've asked about set pieces so many times. We've asked about 5 or 6 times this season. I mean, I'm going to talk about it in a minute. I asked about set pieces only after the Everton game, when the last time was. We do ask about these things. No one is scared of losing anything. We've all been in journalism a long time. We will ask the questions that need to be asked. Don't worry about it. There are some questions you can't ask a manager of a club. Sometimes there are, stuff that have to go to other people within the club who maybe won't talk about those things or be interviewed. But yeah, with the manager, we ask the manager everything we possibly can within his remit. So yeah, we always we know it's coming. We just there's about 3 or 4 of us that get it, and we just say, oh, here they come, here they come, here they come. Don't be afraid, ask this serious question. Show some whatevers is also the other expression. We ask them. As I've said, you've heard me say in previous videos, don't worry. We've faced far worse things in our lives when having to interview people than Premier League football managers. We're not scared of managers. We certainly are not. Yeah, I've had far more difficult questions to ask people in difficult ways of life. But yeah, so set pieces. The thing I noticed, which was a really interesting contrast as well yesterday, was that we had Arsenal set piece coach Nicholas Jova. I think it was Jova. He was constantly right at the edge, either the edge of Arsenal's penalty area, technical area, or beyond it, standing on almost like where the touchline meets the halfway line. He was so far forward, and you could see him bellowing at the Arsenal team what to do at set pieces. So he does attacking set pieces and defensive set pieces. Remember that, because that's going to come in useful when we talk about other coaches. You know where I'm going with that one. So Arsenal took Jova from his German-born coach. I think he was born in Berlin, although I think he spent a lot of time in France. They took him in 2021 from Man City, essentially Arteta poaching him from Pep and obviously knowing him from his work at City. Guardiola took him to City from Brentford in 2019. And yes, he works with both attacking and defending set pieces. And look, there's no doubting what he's done for them this season. They've scored 16 goals from corners in the Premier League alone, which is the most apparently since West Brom did that under Tony Pulis 7 years ago. And in all from set pieces, they've scored 20 goals. And just as crucially, at the other end, they've only conceded 6, which is the joint second best total in the Premier League. So we know, because he said it, and I think I've got the quotes coming up somewhere in my notes, Postecoglou does not believe in the merits of a specialist set-piece coach, which is quite interesting. He is a former defender himself, a left-back in his day in Australian international. So, Spurs did have a set-piece specialist coach under Antonio Conte, only for one season, last season, a chap many of you know, because you've always tweet us about it. Another thing the reporters always get, Gianni Vio. This is my now weekly reminder almost to people. Gianni Vio only concentrated on attacking set pieces. That was all he did. He had 5,000 or so attacking set pieces that he'd drawn up and designed, and he would run through them every week with the team. He did not do anything to do with defensive set pieces. Nothing to do with it. Completely different thing. He was purely focused on attacking set pieces. He was on a freelance contract at Spurs, and that just came to an end when last season came to an end. He is now somewhere in the Championship. I cannot remember where he's gone. Is it Watford, maybe? I'm trying to remember. Might be. Obviously, they've got kind of an Italian background now. I think it might be Watford. I can't remember. I'm sure you'll tell me in the comments. So, he was in charge of the attacking set pieces. I'm sorry that sounds so patronising, but my God, honestly, I get so many tweets after... They're the two things I get after every set piece goal Spurs concede. One is, ask about set pieces, and the other one is, get Vio back. Ask them why they sacked Vio. They didn't sack Vio. His contract came to an end because he was only on a freelance basis, and when Postecoglou came in, it's not something he does. He does not employ set piece coaches. So, the person who was in charge of defensive set pieces at Tottenham last season and the previous season was Antonio Conte. It wasn't Antonio Conte, it was Cristian Stellini. You might remember him. He was the assistant head coach to Antonio Conte, and he was in charge of Spurs for a little run of games after Conte left. So it was Stellini who was in charge of set-piece defending. So if you want someone back, that's the person you want. You have to get Cristian Stellini back from Italy. So if you want to know exactly how Spurs defended under Stellini, I've kind of been looking into this and talking to people around the club. People were there when he was there as well. So Spurs started off with a hybrid system when they defended set pieces, which was Players were asked to man mark 5 or 6 of the opposition players from set pieces, and then the rest would be zonal. And Conte and Stellini kind of found a little bit of an issue. Stellini obviously mainly found this, that Spurs not so great on the man marking. They weren't strong enough in their man marking, and they struggled with it. So what they decided to do was they switched to a zonal system, which is what we're seeing this season as well. And yeah, the stats were better. They were better than this season. So with a zonal system. So look, the zonal system looks a complete mess right now, but actually it can work if done right. It's one of those things I think is always kind of highlighted, and everyone goes, "Oh, look, the zonal system doesn't work. The zonal marking, it's terrible." And then you get like images, a sort of still image of yesterday's game where you could see a load of Spurs players and a load of Arsenal players in a group. Essentially, it's kind of a bit of a false thing, because as soon as the action starts, they all move into the same kind of areas. But it looks bad when it doesn't work. But then equally, in man marking, you've got loads of scenarios where you'll probably hear people say, "Why is he marking him? Why was he left to mark him? Why is the little guy on the big guy?" and stuff like that. And it all, sometimes that can be confusing in itself. And like I said, Stellini quite quickly found that the Spurs players struggled with the man marking. So they switched to a zonal, and it worked to a degree. You know, they didn't concede that many goals from set pieces last season. So that, I guess, in a way, you could argue that that's not a specialist set-piece coach when it comes to the defending side. That is Conte's assistant head coach doing the defensive stuff. And so Postecoglou, you might remember, said last month, we asked about set-pieces. He was asked, he answered, "I've never had a specific set-piece coach. I've always had someone who's responsible for that. I always think it's better if that's someone who's part of the coaching staff, because then that's an extension of how we play our football. I don't separate set pieces from everything else we do. In terms of the team we want to be, it hopefully all links in. Here we split the roles between Mile Jedinak and Ryan Mason in terms of defensive and attack set pieces." So if you're not aware by now, Mile Jedinak works on the defensive set pieces, Ryan Mason on the attacking set pieces. Again, that's another one where I've seen Ryan Mason get slated after games for the defensive set pieces. He has nothing to do with them. He does the attacking set pieces. And they put a lot of work into this with the analysis staff, said Postecoglou. "I'm sure every club does. Some have gone down the specialist route, which I understand. It's just not how I work. I always try to create a collective environment for everything we do so that nothing is separated. I wouldn't feel comfortable bringing in specialists from one particular area. It's just for the way I work more than anything else." So the problem, obviously, with that kind of thinking this season is that Spurs have conceded 12 goals from set pieces this season, which is the joint 6th worst tally in the Premier League with Manchester United. Interesting, Villa have conceded even more. Villa having a mare from set pieces. But I should say in that 12 set pieces, there's some that don't count towards that despite being set piece goals. So for example, Højbjerg's own goal on Sunday goes down as an own goal. It doesn't go down as a set piece goal, when you can kind of argue it's an error from a set piece. So it depends how you kind of collate them. Some people have said it's 14 if you include those. And look, we're talking about Mason. At the other end of the pitch, it remains to be seen whether Ryan Mason will be able to, is it him, is it the players, is it all of the above, whether he will be able to equal what Vio did. Vio last season, Spurs scored from set pieces 16 goals. They've currently scored 11 with Ryan Mason doing the attacking set pieces. So you've got 5 games to go. They could equal it. That would be really interesting, because I'd be fascinated to see kind of what becomes of the Vio narrative if they were able to do that. If they got to 16 goals, there's kind of, you struggle to understand the VO thing, because he doesn't do defensive set pieces. Please remember that, everyone. And attacking wise, if you without him match the number of attacking set piece goals, then kind of, that narrative. And Gianni Vio is a talented guy. He's a very nice guy as well. I spoke to him a couple of occasions when he was at the club. And I'm not kind of doing down his contribution. I'm just saying maybe people kind of heighten it slightly because of what they're seeing this season. When actually, I think a key thing for the attacking set pieces is Maddison and Porro have to really improve their output. The delivery of the ball is such a key thing as well. You can design the best set piece kind of movement, whatever, but if the ball in is not good enough, then, And to be honest, thinking it, I just kind of remembered, that first half, Romero had 2 headers that just went over or wide. He hit the right-hand post with a header as well. That set piece kind of count could have been even higher. It could have had 2 more on it. It could have been 13, so it could have been far closer to the VO total. So, yeah, that's a bit of a misnomer, the whole VO thing. I wouldn't kind of go down that rabbit hole. However, there is issues with the defensive side of it. It's definitely that side of it. There are problems. And, they've already conceded 4 more from set pieces than they did in the total of last season. And 2 more than the previous campaign before that as well. And there's something I only thought about today when I was on the doing a podcast with Guesty, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, if you've never listened to it. I suddenly kind of realised that I was talking about Jova, the Arsenal coach, on the touchline, barking instructions at them all from set pieces. And I suddenly remembered, Mile Jedinak isn't able to do that. He's up near us. He sits kind of near the press box, sometimes within it, with the analysts, analysing the game below. He's spoken about it before and how there's kind of not quite enough room on the bench for him, and it's part of his experience being with the analysts. But then you kind of wonder, would he probably prefer to be down there on the touchline, being able to shout when there's a set piece, what players are meant to do? Look, it may be counted that the players should know what they're doing. They should be drilled to a degree. And that's probably what annoys me the most about yesterday, was that Spurs had 15 days to prepare for the game. They were playing against a team with the most set-piece goals this season, and they conceded 2 goals from set pieces. That's just not good enough. It isn't. And yeah, I did wonder that suddenly this morning, whether is that a thing? Is that a thing that Jedinak is not able to do that? I'm sure if I asked Ange, he would say, well, what's the point? If you're going to do the training, they should need to know what they're doing. And I guess his whole thing is he doesn't really shout too much from the sidelines either, because the players are meant to be knowing what they're doing in every position and situation. The other thing I do think Spurs miss from set pieces is Harry Kane. We spoke about it so much over the years of how important he is as the first line of defence from set pieces, the amount of headers he would get away at the front or the near post. Richarlison can do that, and I think Spurs not having him available for a chunk of this season has also had its effect on that too. Maybe at the other end as well, with set-piece goals, attacking ones too. And I mean, the third goal, Havertz was just given the freedom of the box. He really was. Regardless for all of Ben White's antics that he was doing with Vicario, all you need to do in that situation as well, just get someone in between them. What happened to that? That was absolutely working fine. We had a little kind of issue. There's a couple of games, Everton, Man City, where Vicario was getting kind of bullied a bit and they were concentrating on him. And what Spurs did, which was absolutely the right thing to do, was they didn't shove a big person in there. They didn't shove like a Romero or a Van de Ven in there, taking them away from the big players who will maybe try and head the ball. What they did was they put someone like James Maddison, into that position, and Maddison disrupted the disruptor. And what he did, even if he wasn't going to kind of stop it happening, he caused such a fuss that often the referee was focused his eyes on it, going, hello, what's happening there? And as soon as Vicario was then fouled, the referee stopped it all. And that was it. And it was a foul and a free kick given against. Why did they stop that? Why did that suddenly vanish? That was a really good kind of thing that was happening. It may be that someone is forgetting to do that, which would seem odd because in the analysis they would be constantly told that. It was weird, and it was a real irony. Towards the end of the game, Vicario asked, I think it was the final corner, Vicario looked to the bench and asked, can I go up? Can I go up? And whenever a goalkeeper goes up for a late corner or a set piece or whatever, they're pretty much 100% of the time are trying to just get their head on it. They're normally a big player, of course, because they're a keeper, and they can get their head on and be an absolute pain in the backside in the box. Vicario didn't do that. Vicario charged up there, went straight up to David Raya, and just got in his face and was like kind of jostling with him and doing all the stuff that happens to him. Just kind of, it was almost like he had to take it out on him. God, can you imagine if he'd been given a free kick against him? Everyone would have gone absolutely mad. And it kind of almost felt like he was trying to, I don't know, just point out like, well, this is happening to me, so it's clearly fine. I personally would have preferred him in the mixer, as it were, getting a head on the the cross. There was so many crosses in that second half, and Pedro Porro responsible for a few of them that were just going straight to into Raya's hands. They were just, wasn't good enough at all, a lot of those. Sonny spoke about set piece after the game. He said, the way we played was really good. We dominated the game, but conceding 3 goals like this is painful. These kind of games we really need to step up on it, especially in set pieces. Collectively, we have to be really strong. I know they scored a lot of goals in the Premier League this season, but I think we need to do much better, especially in the first half in the way we played. You need to be strong in the basic things like set pieces and duels. That does include me as well. We've got to do much better. So, I asked Postecoglou about it yesterday. Postecoglou's had this thing, whenever we've asked him about set pieces in recent weeks, he said he's looking at the bigger picture. That's the way he does it, and he's kind of dismissed the set piece thing as, he kind of calls it a trend, like a recent trend that people maybe are fixating on when it's not part of the bigger trend to the season. So I kind of carefully worded my question to incorporate all that, to try and not give him that as a get-out clause. And I said, you've had another 2 set-piece goals. Obviously, are we now at a point where you can see that it's more than just a trend? It's across a whole season that there are so many set-piece goals conceded. And he was kind of nodding. You could see that he was like, okay, all right, you kind of, I see the way you've put this. And then he said, no, because it's understanding where you are as a football team. If I thought fixing defensive set pieces was the answer to us bridging the gap, then I'd put all of my time and effort into that. But that's not where we're at. For us, it's about when I was focused on the details of not just set pieces, but a lot of moments in games where we don't sense that you give good opposition the time and the space to do things, then they're going to hurt you. I think that they maybe had 4 attempts at goal in the first half and they conceded 3, or we conceded 3. I don't think it's about one part of it. I think it's a bigger, broader picture than that. But our defensive set pieces for those 2 goals were very poor. But there's a lot more than that to fix. So look, there's a strand of logic to what he's saying. I get what he's trying to say. There is plenty of work to do on Tottenham's adaptation to his system and his blueprint. But for me, his answer simply begged the question, why can't you work on both? Why do they have to be mutually exclusive? Why can't he and his coaches work with imprinting his philosophy into the players while also improving their ability at defending set pieces? Why has one got to do with the other? Look, I get it. I get that he wants his team to play this fast, aggressive, attacking football. That's great. That's what we all want to see as well. But none of that takes place while you're defending a set piece. It's a static situation. Yeah, it can happen afterwards, the transition. You work on the transition after that. But why does that mean that everything before that, the actual, real moment of defending a set piece, can't be focused on that little bit more? And again, I understand that he's trying to use as much time as possible to focus on getting his methods into players. I just find it a bit odd that it's almost like, yeah, we'll fix that. It just kind of feels like you're undoing a lot of the other good stuff you're doing by allowing that to kind of fester. And as I said, you've got 2 weeks, 15 days to try and work out a way of defending against the league's best set-piece goal scorers. And in his own words to me, we defended poorly from the set pieces. It just suggests a failure to properly prepare for the game. And it kind of takes me back to the Everton game as well. Like I say, Everton are the second highest scorers from set pieces in the Premier League. Both of the goals conceded at Goodison Park were, you guessed it, set pieces. And I asked him that day about set pieces and whether, after having prepared to play a team that was so good on set pieces, they conceded 2 goals from set pieces. And he was like, well, it's just as disappointing to concede any goal. It's not like they've had 2 set pieces and scored 2 goals. They've had about 30 set pieces, and it's just stuff you've got to deal with. And again, it's like that flippant kind of, whatever, I get it. And it's like, really frustrating in a way, because I like so much of what Postecoglou does. And I do wonder if there's a way that he is maybe perhaps shielding 2 different elements. Maybe having known that he's already said Mile Jedinak is in charge of those, maybe he's shielding him to a degree, and maybe he's just trying to stop it becoming a thing and stopping a narrative around it and in the media, and that every time a set piece is slung into the box, the Tottenham defenders are like, oh, another one of those. And I get that, but also it kind of feels like you're then not acknowledging that it is an issue. And like I said, I just don't understand why you can have both. I just don't get that. There's so much to admire about the way Postecoglou goes about stuff, his belief in the way. And look, some people are kind of suggesting he never changes. That's not true. He has evolved over the years, his system, the way he works. He even admitted at the start of this season, when he came in, that he was going to have to learn about the Premier League, and that would cause him naturally to tweak aspects of what he does. It wouldn't change the overall philosophy, but it would tweak how he goes about things and how he comes up against new challenges. And it's interesting. I mean, you look at Celtic. I had a little look back at Celtic and set-piece goals during his 2 years there. They did, in the first season, concede 10 set-piece goals, which was the fourth most in the Scottish Premiership. And there was criticism mid-season about their defending from set-pieces. Just for those interested, they scored 13 from set pieces, which was the joint second highest, joint second highest. So yeah, if you're wondering what happened from season 1 to season 2, their answer is, in the second season, with his system bedded in, they conceded only 7 set piece goals, which was the lowest in the entire league, and they scored 19 from them, which was the second highest. I think it was Rangers got a couple more. So look, I guess for him, this is where it comes from. It comes from this understanding that this is how his first year goes. And he has said it, to be fair, himself. He has said that I focus on the bigger picture. I get my ideas in, and then we can drill down into the more tactical, finer details and stuff. I get that. However, I still don't understand why there can't be a little bit more focus on this one thing. Look, he will point to what happened at Celtic, and he will say, I did it exactly the same way at Celtic, and we improved. We had the best record in the Scottish Premiership the next season from defending set pieces. That may well be what he would say. But I just don't know. I look at sides like Arsenal and Man City, and I see teams that play a really interesting, exciting, attacking brand of football. Both of them quite happy to bring in specialist set-piece coaches. And I'm not saying it definitely requires that, but just a little bit more focus on it as a problem within the team. Because, as I said earlier, I just feel like there's a lot of stuff you can do that is a good thing, and we saw bits of it in the North London derby, but then you're immediately undermining it with the set-piece defending. And the more it happens, the more attention is going to be drawn to it. So that's my first kind of particular gripe, because like I say, they weren't gung-ho, they weren't left open to Arsenal. I didn't feel they were. There were a couple of counter-attacks which Spurs kind of snuffed out, really, as again with the Van der Ven. That's kind of his part in the system. That's what he's supposed to do. It was the set pieces, and that was what kind of undid them. So we'll see in the weeks ahead whether just internally something happens, whether there's a bit more focus on that. Like I said, I'd love even just Maddison or whoever, even if it's just the one of the smaller players on the team, just getting in the middle and disrupting what happens with Vicario. Could Vicario be a bit stronger? Yeah, perhaps. I think that's an element to him adapting to the Premier League in his first season. I think that will come. I think that's, he was never going to have the absolute perfect season. I still think he's had a really good season. He's been unfortunate. There's been a lot of clean sheets that haven't been a lack of clean sheets, which hasn't been his fault. But I do think that there'll be elements he's got to adapt and learn to, and I'm sure he'll be the first to admit that. And it's about knowing how strong he can be from set pieces, and without crossing a line into where he's fouling people and giving away penalties and stuff like that. But it's all part of his learning process. He's quite young as a goalkeeper. What is he, 27? He's nowhere near his kind of prime, and there's loads for him to learn. And also, I think with the defenders as well, people kind of obviously mock like Eric Dyer before he left and things like that. But one of the aspects that he did bring was he was quite dominant a lot of the times from set pieces. He was good at getting his head to stuff. And I think for Romero and Van der Ven, I think Van der Ven maybe has admitted in the past that even despite his size, his heading has got to continue to improve. And that will be something that they'll both work on and improve as well. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how Postecoglou deals with it, because he's going to get annoyed. The questions are there, and they have been there, but they're going to become even more regular with each goal they concede from a set piece. So, yeah, you would hope that in the coming days, this is something that is focused on that little bit more. Look, I'd love to see the team playing perfect Postecoglou football. That is the kind of point. But I don't get why you can't do that and learn how to defend set pieces a little bit better at the same time. I don't get why it has to be this little separate thing. Well, we'll deal with that next year. I don't get it. But he'll say it worked at previous clubs. I would wonder whether in the Premier League it's going to be exposed a little bit more. I don't know. We'll find out one way or another, I guess. A positive from the game. Cristian Romero was excellent. He was great fun to watch because he was just not having the scoreline. He was not settling for a derby defeat. He was not going to let Arsenal get the better of him. He played with his head up the whole time, trying to make things happen, just trying to drive forward, trying to pass up the pitch whenever he could. We talk about the Postecoglou way. Romero has absolutely taken to it. He loves it. He's almost like the physical embodiment of it on the pitch. He just boomed into tackle after tackle. There was one on Tomiyasu, which honestly was so loud. I was like, oh, we all kind of flinched in the press box. I think Tom Holland was behind as Spider-Man as well, although I didn't see him afterwards, really annoyingly. It looked like he was possibly in Maddison's box, or it might have been Bass's boxes near there as well. Just kind of imagine it. Did even a superhero flinch at that noise? And look, Romero loves to wander around the pitch. We know that. Sometimes it's to his detriment, but occasionally it can be quite helpful because it kind of throws the plans of the opposition out the window. And look, when he gets his aggression on the right side, the controlled side, it's a massive thing in dominating opponents. It really, really is. It was his birthday the day before the game. It was 26, I think he's just turned. And it just felt like second half of the game, he just went, I'm always talking about players taking a grip of the game, grabbing it by the scruff of the neck. And it's just what Romero did. He was just like, I am not having this rubbish. There was one spell when he was up front as a centre forward and he kind of was looking across to Postecoglou. I don't know whether it was checking it was okay or whether it was like, when you get a naughty kid and they're kind of doing something and they're like not meant to touch something, or they'll go up to something like a bit of food on a counter and they're like, and they look back to see whether the parent is like, don't do it. And it kind of felt like Romero was doing that. It's like, can I go up front? You're going to tell me off? I'm here anyway. Might as well do it. And there was one moment where he appeared to thank someone. And I couldn't tell whether it was Postecoglou, the coaches, for letting him play as a centre forward for a little spell, or whether it was that he was Basuma for coming back and filling in for him. But look, it was terrific. He pressed high up the pitch. He'd hunt down Arsenal players with the ball. And eventually it led to the goal back for Spurs, the first one. I think he was trying to remember. I think he was trying to do a 1-2 with Richarlison. Either way, Raya got the ball, played a horrendous attempt at a pass, goes straight to Romero. I think he took it down on his chest really well. But anyway, the finish was just, any striker would be proud of it. Rolled it straight in the side, the left-hand post. It was a really nice finish. He was actually Spurs' most dangerous attacker on the day, and he was a centre-back. 4 shots on goal, 4 efforts on goal. They were headers, most of them. 1 header against the right-hand post, like we said, a couple off target. But he was also doing stuff at the other end. 4 tackles, 2 clearances. He blocked 2 shots. He won 5 aerial duels. The pass success rate of 97% from his 67 attempts. I sometimes will say I don't put too much stock in them being too high, but in Romero's case, I could see a lot of them. He was trying different things. They weren't just short, sharp passes. He was trying to make things happen. Even put in 1 cross. I don't know how he got a position putting a cross, but he did. That, for me, is the best version of Cristian Romero. Full of energy, belief, leadership, skills, strength, and most importantly, using that aggression we know he's got in the right way to drive the team on. You could see he lifted people. He posted on social media after the game, or his social media team did, whoever does it. Head up and carry on. This is what it's all about sometimes. I'm more than ever with this team, Spurs official. We will work and finish this season in the best way. Thank you for always being fans. And then his little catchphrase, all together, always. I quite like that he does the social media thing. Again, it may not be him. It may be someone else in his team that does it for him. But I like the fact that after a defeat, coming out and just kind of saying it as it is, or just just communicating with the fans. I kind of felt that was one of my bugbears over recent years, is that too many of the bigger players would only really tweet or put something on social media, or their people, whoever does it, would only do it after a win. And I kind of felt, the fans need you that little bit more after a defeat. And Romero does it pretty much without fail. And that's quite a cool kind of little characteristic of him. I asked my third and final question to Postecoglou was about Romero, and just essentially said, look, that was one positive. I didn't ask it like that. He said he was outstanding. He's a World Cup winner, and I've just got to get some of what's in him into some of the others. It was quite a rare thing, that, really. He often shields the players, and this was very much a, why can't you all be like him? Which I like. I agree. I did feel like it was a day when Romero was really the only leader that kind of stepped up as a leader. Sonny scored a great penalty towards the end, but didn't really do much in terms of trying to drive the team on before that. I kind of felt it was a really good penalty under pressure, but I just felt he and Maddison were quite kind of anonymous in the game before that. Maddison especially so. And yeah, I mean, Vicario's another kind of leader in the making. He obviously didn't have the best of days, so it was kind of left to Romero. And he almost managed to galvanise them enough to grab a point from it as well. Look, he does have to take some responsibility for the set-piece stuff. This is, for me, an area where he still needs to grow. 26 years old, he's still got a long time before he gets his prime as a centre-back. But I do feel like he can take that leadership into an organisational talking role with the team at set pieces. I think that can be part of his remit, really getting them to be better in what they do and organising that back line better, because it is quite a young back line on the whole. I know Ben Davies came in rather than Doggy yesterday, but yeah, he can, if you're in a back line that concedes 3 times, you've also got to take your kind of role within that. But I do feel it was a game where he showed how much he can bring to the team, and it's Chelsea next for him, which we know is when he absolutely lost his head. His worst display of the season in the home game earlier in the camp. It was in November. That was just, he could have got sent off twice in that game. He was so daft in it. And he knows he needs to be on his best behaviour at Stamford Bridge while still retaining, I guess, the aggressive side that remains on the right side of the line. That's the big thing for him. It was because, look, he clearly is in a really good place now with the club and with the Postecoglou way. He feels a really close connection to it, and he could be the real figurehead that this side is built on, the rock at the back that he could be. Postecoglou absolutely loves him. He seems to love Postecoglou, and I think together they can kind of really help each other, I guess, build the foundations of what comes next. And he was a positive, but there's a lot to fix. There is. I mean, we're 10 months in now, and I think this past fortnight, the 2 defeats, Newcastle and Arsenal, will have shown him kind of how much needs to be done. Especially against Arsenal, you've seen moments of how close they are. And bearing in mind they drew 2-2 early in the season, you can see where the green shoots are of kind of progress, but you can also see there's so much that needs to be done still. And look, he was speaking quite a lot on the press conference ahead of the game. Was quite an interesting one. There's loads of stuff in it about kind of what he wants Spurs to be. And one thing he said was, that's what I've been saying all along. That's where I want us to be. When it gets to this time of the year, I want us to be one of the ones fighting for that ultimate prize. Right now, we're 10 to 15 points behind that. That's your measure. We could win on Sunday. They didn't. But it doesn't mean we're title contenders this year. To be title contenders, you've got to do it over the course of the whole year. That's how I'm measuring ourselves. So we know we've still got some work to do. At the same time, we're in a better position than we were 12 months ago to build on that. That has to be our aim, that in 12 months' time, we're in a position where we're one of the contenders rather than trying to disrupt them. Look, he's got the team higher up the table than they were last season. They will finish with more points than they did last season, barring an absolute horror show in the last 5 matches. I'm not going to go into all the circumstances around this season. You know them all too well, and what he's had to deal with as well. I do think these last 5 games will provide Postecoglou with a final definitive answer on some of the squad, who needs to stay, who needs to go, what he needs to improve. You've heard me say a few times now about him wanting a new number 6, and I mean the lineup for yesterday's game kind of showed that Basuma really is loosening his hold on that role for next season. He's kind of absolutely he's been his own worst enemy in that as well. This was the first time this season that he's been dropped from a Premier League starting lineup. If we're not including the one where he just come back from the Africa Cup of Nations, which I think is fair because he was only kind of easing him in. This was the first time he'd actually said to him, no, you're fully fit, you're available, but you're not starting for me. And that was a big thing. Obviously, he put in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and I understand that. There's been calls for it. For me, I wouldn't have done it in this match, and I didn't have him. And that's not hindsight. I had that in my teams that I did before the game because I just felt Basuma had been really good against Arsenal in the game at the Emirates. And actually, when he came off the bench, he was quite good yesterday, Basuma. He did contribute to really pushing Spurs back up the pitch again. I do feel sorry for Højbjerg. Coming off the bench, he's added so much to Spurs this season. Starting, it's been a bit of a nightmare. They've only won once in his 9 starts this season, and they've lost all but 3 of them. It was two draws and 1 win. And look, as Guesty said when we spoke about this on the podcast earlier, it's not all Højbjerg's fault, those defeats, but he'll have played a part in them as one of the defending players that is kind of more involved in defending. So yeah, it kind of may end up earning Basuma a reprieve without him actually having to do much, just purely because of that. And that midfield's been an issue. It's one of the biggest areas, I think, for him to fix for next season. The blend isn't right. Bentancur was okay. He was probably one of the more progressive players in the first half, but didn't make it for the second half. He'd gone off. He was sacrificed for Pat Matar, who he did all right. He was quite mobile. He brought a lot of kind of... Again, I wanted Sarr, Basuma and Maddison to start. They were in my... Here's the team I want to see, which is the team I do before my predicted team. And probably the most worrying player in that midfield is James Maddison. He was one of the signings of the summer. When we were in 2023, it feels a long time ago, he was a major part of everything that was working so well about the Postecoglou system. And then just obviously had that ankle injury. It just hasn't worked for him since. I was looking up his numbers. In the first 17 games for Spurs in the Premier League, Maddison had 11 direct goal involvements, 7 assists, 4 goals. He hasn't contributed a goal or assist in his past 6 matches over the last month and a half. The one against Arsenal was probably his worst, I think. It was just so underwhelming, so quiet. It was one of those where you notice the things about him that people criticise him for more than the good things. He's a very talented playmaker. He can be a terrific player, involved in everything on the pitch. But when he's not and things aren't going his way, he can occasionally lapse into trying to win free kick mode, which is, he is fouled a lot. He's probably one of the most fouled players in the Premier League. He takes a lot of kicks, which I think is why, he gets his ankle problems of this season. But there are times when you just think, just stay on your feet. And actually, it was right after the Kulusevski moment when he kind of went through and a defender, might have been Gabriel, I can't remember who it was, got a foot to the ball. And he kind of almost just flung himself to the floor. And you think, ugh. The ball actually kind of went through with you. If you'd stayed up, you might have been able to get through. I could be doing a disservice. He might have not been able to stand up. But yeah, it just didn't work for him at all. And I wonder whether, a bit like Basuma, could we against Chelsea see him for the first ever time not put in a starting lineup when he's been fully fit and available, because it's just not clicking. He's just not in his groove right now. And I think the Spurs, when Kulusevski went into that position, kind of looked better. They did. Kulusevski had a good game. Obviously he's been out of starting lineup for the last, I think it's roughly the same amount of time, about a month and a half. And he came into the starting lineup and he did well. He did okay on the right. He was the one that was trying to make things happen the most. He does have still, of course, kind of cut inside, but he was causing them problems. It was just the final ball that let him down. And then when he moved into that midfield area, I just thought he just became, a more integral part of the team, I suppose. Although he was roaming a bit like Romero. He was often on the right-hand side when he should have been on the left, and that's fine as long as other people are kind of covering. It's all a bit total football-y. There was one bit, weirdly, in the... Where would he have been? It was first half. Pedro Porro came over to receive a throw-in from Ben Davies. And you were like, why are you on the right-hand side of the pitch, or left-hand side of the pitch as the right-back? I didn't understand that. That was really weird. He hadn't been there because of something else. He just wandered across. And I know it's supposed to be inverted, but that's incredibly inverted. That's very strange. But yeah, for Maddison, it's such a kind of shame what's happened at the moment. And I don't know whether he is still suffering any little ankle problems. He's not 100%. I don't know. But yeah, he just kind of seems to have fallen off a cliff a little bit. And it's a big call to take him out against Chelsea. But I just think form-wise, if he's not contributing anything, it's difficult kind of to put him ahead of other players. But then you just never know. All he needs is a bit of a magic, and he kind of can conjure something. Because, you know, he should be going up against someone like Cole Palmer and thinking, like, that's meant to be me. I'm meant to be the guy that everyone's talking about in the Premier League. I've got my big move. I'm at, wanted the next step that I kind of wanted. I was doing so well. Everyone was raving about me as signing of the summer. And yeah, he's really kind of gone straight under the radar again, and no one's really talking about him in a good way. So yeah, big game for him if he does start, and you know, if he is on the bench, then maybe he needs to kind of use that as a way to reset and that old cliche that we've been talking about recently. See the game from a different angle on the bench. We'll see who else. Richarlison did okay. He only touched the ball 7 times, but he was just a nuisance. He was a focal point, and he managed about half an hour, 35 minutes. If he is fit enough, I think he needs to be in the starting lineup. They ended up with the front three that I wanted them to start the game with. I wanted Richarlison through the middle, Sonny on the left, and Brennan Johnson on the right. I thought Brennan Johnson came on and was quite positive and direct in his play, and he gave Tomiyasu some real problems. And maybe having Kulusevski as the left side of the midfield three, maybe that allows you to have that front three. I just feel it's so much more balanced. And I don't think it's any coincidence that once Richarlison came on, Spurs scored 2 goals. I just feel like he added something to their play. Like I said, only touched the ball 7 times, but it's a lot of his off-the-ball work that causes it. He ties up the centre-backs. Sonny, look, is a great goal scorer, and he got another one yesterday with a terrific penalty. But I feel there are times when he'll come deep looking for the ball, and then you look up and you're like, who are they going to pass that into in the box? Who are they going to put across it? There is no one in the box. There were so many times in the first half that was so frustrating when there was just no one to aim for in the box for Spurs. And that makes an easy job for Saliba and Gabriel. They're a bit like, cracking lads, all right, we'll just wander around the edge of the penalty area then. And as soon as Richarlison went in there, he kind of came on the pitch, I think, ready to kind of just mess things up. He went on and he went quite quickly up to, was it Gabriel? Was it Gabriel? I think it was Gabriel, and like kind of shoved him. And look, I'm not saying that's the greatest thing to do, but it kind of essentially just was a warning. It was like I'm here. You have to deal with a different kind of player now. And yeah, I think Richarlison has to start, and yeah, I would have that front three against Chelsea personally, because obviously we've lost Timo Werner. Only lasted half an hour, and it seems to be a hamstring injury he's picked up. He left the mix zone area looking quite downcast after the game and downbeat. So maybe that means it's something it's going to keep him out for a while. We'll find out in the press conference on Wednesday. It's a difficult one for him, because obviously if it proves to be a bad enough injury that's his loan kind of cut short, or the end of the season for him, I don't know then whether he's done enough to get himself that permanent deal. Well, that will be in the hands, I guess, of Postecoglou and the club. Kind of, you've heard me saying about Werner in the past, but it was kind of on the proviso that he would keep going to the end of the season, contributing everything. And if his season ends now, then you get into that territory of what I've said before about, the wages. You start to look at stuff like that. It would be too high an earner for a squad player. The fee's not bad, 15 million or so, but then you really start to look at the big wages he'd be on as a rotation option next season. And yeah, it would just be then whether he's done enough over his period, or whether he ends up just being a player that came in to help out this season. We'll see, but that would be a real shame if he lost the opportunity, at least try to show that in the last couple of games. Look, he needs more quality in those attacking places. You know, I think there'll be. I think I said this last video. I'd imagine they'll get in another centre forward and probably look at a couple of wingers as well if they can. You know, whether Werner was going to be one of them, whether he's not now and it's someone else. He needs more attacking talent kind of in those midfield areas and also up front as well. We know Lucas Bergvall will be coming in on July the 1st from Djurgården. And look, he may need a bit of time to adapt. When I spoke to people around him, they said about 6 months or so. But you never know. Could end up being a bit like Dele. Dele came in from MK Dons, obviously coming in from League One level at that point, and he smashed it straight off as an 18-year-old. So you never know. It could work, but we'll see. There was an even younger player who's been doing very good things around the club in the last couple of weeks. You heard me talk about him last week when I was talking about the training. That was Mikey Moore. Mikey got taken to be the 21st man yesterday with the squad, which is a massive experience for a 16-year-old. So 21st man, if you're not aware of it, is the player who, if there's injury or an illness before a game in the warm-up, they'll come into the squad. So huge for him. And I actually asked Postecoglou about Mikey on Friday, the press conference before the game, because I knew that he'd been heavily involved. He was only meant to be training with the team for a couple of days, but he impressed them so much, he stuck with them. And I kind of expected Postecoglou to maybe play him down a bit, but he was really good, his answer. He said, Mikey's been really good. Look, he's a very talented boy, and for him, he's had a fairly disrupted season. He's had a couple of injuries, but when he's performed really well. The reports I've had on him have always been outstanding. It's been good to have him. Obviously, we've had a couple of weeks without a game, and it's been good to get him involved in the first team. Again, to be fair to him, he's adapted really well. He hasn't looked out of place, and it's great for him. Hopefully, it gives him encouragement and some of the other guys who are coming through as well. It's all been such a big deal for 16. I have to keep reminding myself and everyone, it's 16. So I'm not going to get carried away. I'm not going to say this or that. But I wouldn't be shocked. I think he could well find himself on that flight to Melbourne for the post-season game against Newcastle. And then potentially for the summer tour to, we now know, Japan, or we've had it confirmed it's Japan, and Korea as well. And that'll all be before he turns 17. I think it's August he turns 17 as well. We'll get his first professional contract then. Who knows? With Werner out now, there might even be a spot for him on the bench on Thursday. Could be either him or Jamie Donnelly. I noticed that for the under-21s tonight, there's a few of the kind of more senior players there. I think Donnelly, Santiago and Dorrington maybe all not involved. So whether that is because they've been working with the first team today, I don't know. But you never know. You know, if Werner's not in, obviously if Skippy had an injury or a little knock in training, if he's available, maybe he comes into that bench, but then you're losing an attacking option. So it would kind of make more sense to have either Jamie Donnelly or Mikey Moore on there. Maybe Mikey Moore gets ahead because of what he's been doing in the last couple of weeks and being there yesterday as the 21st man. But then Jamie Donnelly's had an amazing season. You know, I don't think you can go too far wrong with either one in it from an experience point of view from Postecoglou, but we'll see. We'll see what he picks. They're all exciting kind of talents for the future, but Spurs do need attacking more senior players for the now as well. From what I understand, like a few clubs, they're going to try and get some deals done early this summer, because a lot of it is also partly obviously to get players in through the doors so that they can get a good pre-season with Postecoglou. But also, don't forget, we've now got this kind of thing with the profit and sustainability rules where clubs have to have money in before, I think it's by June the 30th is the deadline. So you suddenly have this scenario now where clubs, and it's not just in the UK, the UEFA rules kind of apply to the clubs obviously in the continent, and they've got to have their books settled before July the 1st kind of comes around. July 30th is probably the best way of putting it. So a lot of clubs now are trying to get sales done before then. And that's where Spurs can kind of go into the market and kind of do what Spurs do and try and get the best deals. You know, they moved quite quickly to get Maddison last year. They got Vicario as well. I mean, they were trying to get Brennan Johnson from Forest earlier. Forest kind of didn't really go for the bids that were coming in then, eventually let him go, and obviously we know that was kind of to their cost because they ended up getting a deduction, a points deduction, because they messed it all up a little bit. Spurs got Richarlison in June a couple of years back, although that didn't help Everton in the end. So yeah, I would say we'll see a couple of signings again in June this year, late June, before that window opens, and that's a good thing. I think it's only a good thing, you know, getting people through the doors sooner rather than later. Yeah, and there was actually more financial fair play stuff came out today. You might have seen that Spurs were one of the 16 clubs apparently who voted in favour of the principle, is the best way to put it, of a spending cap, which would see clubs in the league restricted to spending a proportion of the amount the bottom club in the Premier League earns in TV and commercial money. So if clubs were allowed to spend, one of the figure that was kind of mooted was 4.5 times the amount that bottom club earns. And that would then include their wages, amortised transfer fees, and payments to agents would all have to remain within this total. So I think the idea, someone used maybe 5 times as an idea. I think Southampton last season earned about 108, so 5 times that, 500 and whatever that is. My maths is so bad. 500. Oh, I'm not even going there. It's that bad right now. That's 40, isn't it? 540 million. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. So yeah, apparently the 2 Manchester clubs voted against it, as did Aston Villa, and Chelsea abstained from voting, according to reports. The finer details of it, or the actual proposal itself, they're now going to go away with it. Little details, whether it is the total domestic TV income, or whether it is domestic and overseas TV income, which obviously is a far bigger deal. And then they'll put that all together with a formal vote at the Premier League AGM next month. So we'll find out. It's an interesting idea. It's one that is kind of it depends which way you want to look at it. It's kind of a little bit closer to Americanizing the sport. You know, the NFL, which you'll no doubt know that I do like my NFL. That's a sport where, as I think all of the American sports are kind of within a controlled environment to ensure that the competition is stronger, that any team one year could do better than the rest. Obviously, the draft system massively helps that as well, but also everyone having to remain within certain spend limits, and they have a cap, and what they can spend, they'll know at the end of each season what they can spend the next season, and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, Postecoglou is actually not a fan of that system, which is interesting. So obviously, Spurs have voted for such a system, presumably because it kind of stops the likes of, I suppose, Man City and Man U spending huge sums on players if it kind of falls outside that thing. But actually, Postecoglou was asked about it earlier this month, and how regulation and all that works. And he said, I come from a world where it's been very, very regulated. So equalisation in Australia, like it is in American sports, is very, very big. So I've come from that world, and I didn't like it one bit. There's always an understanding that you've got to create some kind of competitive balance between clubs, and there isn't too much of a divide between clubs who can spend at random at times compared to clubs who have restrictions. You want to keep that balance, but I've always felt that not at the expense of demotivating people from being the best that they can be. Sometimes I've felt like in Australia we've had a salary cap, and it's a bit similar to what they're calling a luxury tax. It keeps the competition even, but I also felt it suppressed the ability to try to be better than the rest. America is kind of similar. Whatever model they come up with, it's that balance of keeping it competitive, because you do want competitive leagues. You don't want teams just spending to win things, but at the same time, you don't want to suppress that ability for excellence. I've always said it's not just about having money, it's how you spend it. If I have half the money someone else does, if I spend it better, then I can still beat them. So it's that balance. But for you and me, mate, we'll leave that to the financial people, and we'll talk about the football. So yeah, it's interesting. Let me know kind of what you think. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to ask as well. I'll put this to a little kind of the comments underneath. I've seen some people suggesting Romero as a number 6. Let me know your thoughts on that. Personally, I can understand it. I can understand he's got the technical ability and skills to operate in that role. However, I do think his wandering would then go absolutely crazy. You'd find him everywhere. At least now he knows, like, oh yeah, I've got to go back and be a centre-back. I do wonder whether, actually discipline-wise, he might not be as good in that position. I don't know. And also, I think if I'm Postecoglou, I'm probably not wanting to lose my dominant, aggressive leader type from the back line. It's the same reason why I don't like the idea of Van der Ven as the left back, because you're losing his pace from the exact position you need him to be in the most in that system. Although some people also suggesting, which is a good point, that the set pieces might be easy to defend if you had Dragusin in there, who is brilliant in the air. So maybe, that's another aspect to it. But yeah, let me know. Let me know. I did think that was a really interesting kind of idea. Obviously, Eric Dyer ended up going from centre-back to defensive midfield to centre-back. He was kind of all over the place. Different kind of player. But yeah, I'm interested just to know what people think. But yeah, in terms of signings, they are going to look to get a few in early. I think they have to, really. But it's key that they're the right players. Talking of prospective signings, there seemed to be quite a few players from other clubs at the game yesterday. A couple of Feyenoord players, one of them being Santiago Jimenez, who you've heard me speak about before, the Feyenoord free-scoring striker who Spurs kept a little bit of an eye on, 23-year-old Mexican in the last couple of seasons. So, look, it can mean absolutely nothing. There's so many players that go to games. There's, like I say, Base have got a box there. Probably other agencies have got a box there. I'm pretty sure there's a few actually that have. So it can just be that. I think the Feyenoord players had the weekend off. I think they played maybe on Thursday. I think Arne Slot let them just kind of head off to do whatever they want to do. And I think a few of them came over. I think Guesty was saying there was one that went to the Liverpool game. And like I said, it was a couple at the Spurs, the North London derby as well. And they often can be there with their families, some players. So it doesn't always mean something. But look, as an advert for Jimenez, seeing the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, seeing what it's all about, hearing the noise of the crowd and seeing the way Spurs play, apart from the set-piece moments, it's not the worst thing in the world. You know, I think there was talk that Eze from Crystal Palace watched a recent game with his family as well. That'll probably be again in the base box. So it's not the worst thing in the world, I think, for them to see kind of the setup at Spurs a little bit more in the flesh. So it's going to be a crazy summer. You know, we've heard me speaking about the amount of players that have got a year left. There's so many. It naturally is going to create a big old overhaul. And I just feel like midfield and attack, that's the areas for me that now need the most work. There'll be defensive recruits, I would imagine, as well. But for me, getting that midfield blend right and the blend right up front is huge, especially with more games next season as well. But look, there's still 450 minutes or so of this season still to go. We've got to get that out of the way first. 2 tough trips to teams that are also stuttering a bit at the moment. Chelsea away, Liverpool away. All 3 clubs are going to be looking to kind of show a bit of a response. And I think Spurs need to be the one that show the biggest response. It's all very well apologising for these kind of defeats and the manner of certain aspects of it. It's got to be all about actions, as you know, just as much as words, and even more so than words. And you know, when you make a mess of something and you need to apologise, you know, you get a bunch of flowers. I guess the best bunch of flowers that Spurs could bring for the fans right now are wins. Go to Stamford Bridge, a place where Spurs don't really win, and win. Go to Anfield, where Spurs struggle sometimes to get wins, and win. Go and do it. Go and kind of turn this around and please focus a little bit on the set-piece defending. That'd be really great. Look, I'm not saying they don't focus on set-piece defending, but I do feel like a little bit more should be put towards it. And that's only going on what Postecoglou is saying. Could just be leading us up a garden path to protect the players and Jedinak maybe, and just his own kind of management. I don't know. But yeah, please, no more set-piece goals. So I'm actually going to miss in the flesh the next 2 games, which is a complete and utter mess on my part to a degree, and on the scheduling gods as well. I'm about 6 months ago booked myself a little trip to go and see Croatia. Never been there, and I thought to myself, look, if I kind of head out there on the Thursday, I'll catch any midweek game that's at Spurs first, and then I kind of head out there and go and see a country I've never been to. I'm going to Split and Dubrovnik, just have a little look at the place. Big Game of Thrones fan. A lot of that kind of happened there too. And I thought, that'll be brilliant. I'll just miss the one game. Liverpool away, that's okay. I don't mind missing that. That's fine. It's not a game I particularly love or enjoy over the years, so that's fine. And then what happens? Chelsea game gets rescheduled on a Thursday night. There is no way. I have still no idea why it's a Thursday night or why it had to be a Thursday night. And yeah, so the footballing gods went gutted gold. You're going to get 2 games that you're going to miss. And, I've kind of got quite a decent feeling about the Stamford Bridge game. I don't know why. There's no evidence to suggest that, but I've just kind of got a feeling we'll see a response in that game especially. And I'm going to be elsewhere trying to watch it. So yeah, that's an absolute pain in the backside. But I will watch them in some form, even if it ends up having to kind of watch some bits and pieces and then watch them in full-on Spurs play after. We'll see. It depends what I'm doing at the times that they play. But yeah, bit of really annoying actually. I thought, one game with another 3 to go, that's fine. I'm not missing the actual big part of the running, but to miss 2 in 2 big games, I am gutted about that. I'll be honest. But I'll do a video on my return, and we'll talk about it all. What else? Thanks again for everyone that's tuning in to Gold Goes to the Movies. I'm enjoying that as a bit of a side thing. It's good fun, and it's proving to be quite helpful for people. If you're looking for a movie to watch on TV, I've kind of got so many recommendations in those videos now, and I'm getting lots of thanks from people for suggesting certain films, whether it's at the cinema, whether it's on streaming, or whether it's just one I happen to catch that I hadn't seen in years. Like I watched Parasite this week. I haven't spoken about that in a video yet, but I love that. I'm going to be talking about that in one of the future videos with more new releases as well. But yeah, just about finding little bits and pieces and films that people might not have thought to watch as well. And thank you for the response. It's been really cool. It's quite fun to kind of build up a new channel as well. It kind of takes me back to the early days of this channel. And yeah, thank you very much to those who have kind of got on board with that. And if you haven't yet and you like your movies, please do. It's good fun. It's good fun. It's kind of the same idea of these videos, but still talking about movies, much shorter. Because there's obviously less to kind of dive into and dissect, and they're spoiler free, so you can watch them and let you know if you want to watch a film. It's not going to ruin anything for you. But I digress. Back to the football. Back to Tottenham. I'll be at the press conference on Wednesday at Hotspur Way. There'll be plenty more to talk about, no doubt, with Postecoglou, and seeing kind of how upfront he is about stuff, what he wants to tell us, what we can get out of him, and I want to get more on next season. It's almost next season I'm kind of starting to look towards as well. So I'll maybe try and get more out of that on him, out of him on that. And then a big old derby rears its head straight away again. So right, I'm going to head off. So yeah, not a great weekend at all. North London derby defeat, the worst kind of defeat. They really are. They suck. Even as a reporter, I felt it in the pit of my stomach afterwards. Even with the comeback in the second half, it's horrible. The fan in me still can't take those sort of defeats. But hopefully there's bits and pieces in there to be taken. And like I said, I thought just finding those little stats at Celtic were quite interesting as well about the set pieces. So let's see what comes next. Hopefully better things to come. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.